Hey, it's Ari here. Hope you're doing well. In today's topic, I want to talk about the following. We are all pawns and we are all being treated like cattle. What I'm mainly referring to in this video is the life of corporate America that most Americans can probably relate to in this video. And I want to talk about my experience working corporate America, the past decade of my life. Well, let's see, I'm 28 and I started working at the age of 16, so about 12 years of my life. So I mean, not as long as other people that are, older than me, but I want to talk about why you should be extremely urgent when it comes to how you use your free time and getting out of that rat race as quickly as possible, right? So as far as for me goes, I've worked mainly retail jobs throughout, my whole adult life. I've worked, my first job that I've had was working in a restaurant. And then from there, I've mainly worked at like different grocery stores. So I worked at a, store as a bagger, and then I worked at a dollar store, and then a liquor store, and then another grocery store as well. And then that was like, more like stocking shelves basically, right? So, in my case, the number one thing that I've often felt, when it came to working these jobs is you go to work 40 hours a week, typically like 8 hours per day, 5 days of the week. And then oftentimes, like when you get home from work, you feel very tired, lethargic, and you have very little energy or time to do really anything else, right? Maybe you kind of want to rest a bit, you want to maybe relax, and then before you know it, it's time to wake up and get ready for work again. So I believe that most Americans can relate to this exact cycle, is kind of like the feeling of Groundhog Day. And if you want to share your experience, then feel free to let me know down below what it's like for you working, the regular jobs that you've had. Are there any jobs that you've had that you actually like enjoyed going to, like genuinely looked forward to working? Because in my case, whenever I hear someone talk about like their new position that they got, like, oh, I got this new like really good position, it pays really well. Typically for me, like whenever I hear someone talk about their new, I guess like job or position that they got, I always think of it like it's decent until someone else takes over the company, or until someone leaves that company and then someone else takes over, and then everything just goes downhill from there. And so that's kind of been the theme with every single job that I've worked. Sometimes it's decent, sometimes it's better than others. And typically when you go through a phase where the job you're at is like tolerable, then you feel comfortable, right? You don't really feel like this sense of urgency to get out. But then it's during the days where you maybe are being overworked, or someone quit and then they're expecting you to do more work for the same amount of pay, and then you are getting stressed out because it's way more than you can handle. And in my case, a few examples that I'll give was at the dollar store that I worked. Oftentimes it was, the way it was set up was there typically would be like 2 or 3 people working the entire store throughout, pretty much the entire day. So there, for the most part, would be like a manager or assistant manager working, and then there'd be the person running the cash register. And typically the cashier would be not only ringing up customers, but also stocking shelves, and then keeping everything like recovered, like all the items facing forward, while simultaneously having to ring up customers. So you're constantly going like back and forth, trying to get everything up. And so my experience working this position was, no matter how hard I worked, even when I took energy drinks and was sprinting back and forth, like super hyped up and trying to work as fast as I can, I would often get told that I'm not working hard enough. I'm not going fast enough, and I need to pick up the pace basically. And so that was kind of the feeling, that's kind of the vibe you feel when you're working most of these jobs. It's like, no matter what, you're always being told, pick up the pace, hurry it up, come on, we gotta get everything out, we gotta get all these pallets done. And it just gets very exhausting after a while. And so it would be fine if the pay was actually good enough where you could, afford to live on your own, you could have your own place. But unfortunately, what I keep seeing is more young folks that are working 40 hours a week at one of these jobs, and they barely have enough to live on their own, let alone supporting an entire family. And so in my case, when I worked this job, I was within walking distance from my mom's place. I was living with my mom at the time, and it was to the point where I could just basically go to work, maybe help out with a couple bills, and that was even working 40 hours a week. So the mistake that I made was oftentimes I would get, too comfortable in a lot of these positions, and then I would end up being like the number one, like, loyal employee that would be there like longer than everyone else. And that definitely backfired on me, because 4 years that I was at that position, I maybe got like a, $1 or $2 raise when I went up to assistant manager, but it wasn't worth it, because going up to that position just added all this extra stress onto my life. And the other thing with this position in particular was I was often on standby. So whenever I was off work, there would always be the possibility of someone calling in, or someone not showing up, or someone getting fired, and then the manager that's working there tries to force me to work and says that if I don't come in, then she's going to fire me, basically. So that was definitely a recurring theme that I had to face working at that position. So eventually I left because of that, because I'm like, I can't really take this anymore. The next job that I had after that was in a liquor store. That job was pretty chill, I will say. That was a lot more tolerable, and it was also walking distance, which is pretty nice. But then I got the next position after that, which was stocking shelves in a grocery store. That was after I started living on my own, and because the liquor store position that I had didn't really pay that much, then I couldn't, keep that position. So I had to get the next position. And, the pay was pretty decent, it was like, 17, 18 bucks an hour. However, the thing is with that job, it was even after working 40 hours a week, pretty much all of that income got taken up by rent and then transportation. And so again, the thing with that job is you just often feel rushed, basically. So that has been my experience working, regular 9-to-5 jobs. And so in my case, what I've been doing over the past few years is I've been doing digital marketing during my free time, and that's something that I'm earning a residual income with. So if you want to start building up another income stream outside of your 9-to-5, and you want to start building an exit plan, which I highly recommend doing, then I highly recommend that you have another income stream outside of your 9-to-5. Start some sort of online business, look into freelancing, look into AI, do something other than the traditional 9-to-5 job, because number one, there's the risk of AI taking over jobs. You can get fired at any point, and the wages that you're getting are not keeping up with cost of living. So if you want any chance of living somewhat of a comfortable life that your parents or grandparents have, then the best thing that you could do is have multiple streams of income. And I highly recommend having, ways of making money online. That's going to be the simplest path for most people if you want to live a comfortable lifestyle. So if you want to learn more about what I'm doing, you could check out the training that I have created down below. Otherwise, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Give us a thumbs up and take care. All the best.